The moment the cameras caught her, Meghan Markle was smiling. Perfect, poised, flawless. The flashing lights of the red carpet reflected off her gown like a halo, but behind the smile was a storm that no one could see. It was the U.S. premiere of Wicked, for Good, a night that should have been sparkling, triumphant, a celebration of art and celebrity. But for Meghan, it was about to become a lesson in the cruel, unfiltered reality of fame. You see, for all the global attention, all the headlines, and all the media adoration, there is a line between recognition and relevance, and Meghan Markle was about to feel the sting of crossing it. But before we continue, please subscribe and turn on the notification bell for updates. Imagine walking into a room filled with Hollywood's elite, A-list actors, chart-topping musicians, powerful producers, and tastemakers whose nods or dismissals could change the trajectory of a career. The air is thick with excitement, perfume, and tension. Every step on the red carpet is photographed, every glance analyzed, every smile is scrutinized. And then, in the middle of it all, someone whispers words you weren't expecting. Someone whose very presence dominates the industry. Someone who doesn't just perform, but commands attention with a single Instagram post, a single viral video. Ariana Grande, superstar of pop culture, suddenly speaks, or rather, doesn't. I don't know who that is. Those words hit harder than any headline. Imagine the cold, casual dismissal, disguised as indifference, echoing across the cacophony of the premiere. To the crowd, it was a throwaway remark. But to Meghan, it was a jolt of reality. The kind of reality that the paparazzi never capture, the kind that cuts deeper than any tabloid story. A reality that made her question not only her place in Hollywood, but her own relevance. And this wasn't just a fleeting moment. It was a collision of worlds. On one side, you have Meghan Markle, the former royal, the global figure, the woman who has been dissected, praised, and vilified in equal measure. On the other, Ariana Grande, the pop princess whose name alone commands attention, whose influence is woven into the very fabric of celebrity culture. It's a clash, not of malice, perhaps, but of perception. And perception, in Hollywood, is everything. The cameras caught Meghan's polite smile, the way she nodded, the poised hand on the hip. But did they capture the subtle twitch of the corner of her mouth, the flash of disbelief in her eyes? Did they notice the tightness of her jaw, the way she forced herself to remain graceful while internally grappling with an unspoken humiliation? Probably not. And yet, that split-second interaction would spiral into headlines, tweets, memes, and endless online debates. A simple phrase, "I don't know who that is," would reverberate far beyond the walls of the theater, infiltrating social media timelines, late-night talk shows, and YouTube comment sections. Think about it. How does it feel to have your identity questioned in a room full of admirers? To walk a red carpet where everyone is watching, and yet someone with unparalleled influence casually dismisses you? That's not just embarrassment. That's a complex cocktail of emotions, disbelief, frustration, sadness, and, yes, anger. For Meghan, who has spent her life in the public eye, who has navigated royalty, fame, and global attention, this was a moment that stripped it all away. Stripped away the titles, the protection, the narrative carefully curated by teams of advisors and PR specialists. At that moment, she was just another woman in a sea of celebrities, and the world had reminded her of it. But let's back up a second. Why does this matter so much? Why is a single comment, a fleeting moment, worthy of an entire exposé? Because this is not merely a story about ego or fame. It's about perception and power in the celebrity world. It's about how quickly public opinion can turn, how one tiny exchange can become a viral event that defines a narrative for weeks, months, even years. And it's about the human side of celebrity, the vulnerabilities, the insecurities, and the unspoken desire to be recognized, accepted, and respected. Meghan Markle is a woman who has experienced this on an enormous scale, yet even she can be caught off guard by the seemingly casual dismissals of others. Now, you might be asking yourself, was this really that shocking? People get snubbed all the time. Celebrities are human, right? They forget names, make mistakes, or ignore others unintentionally. But here's the twist. The timing, the context, and the cultural weight made it devastating. This wasn't just any event. It was the Wicked. For Good premiere, an evening that drew attention from media outlets around the globe. And this wasn't just anyone dismissing Meghan. It was Ariana Grande, a powerhouse with millions of fans, whose voice alone can dominate conversations across continents. The dismissal wasn't private, it was public. It was photographed, whispered about, and recorded. The world saw it happen. And social media didn't just notice, it amplified. Let's be clear. Meghan Markle has been through moments like this before. She's faced criticism for her choices, attacks from tabloids, and skepticism from the public. She's been analyzed, criticized, and celebrated in equal measure. But there is something uniquely painful about being dismissed by a contemporary peer, someone who inhabits the same world of fame and influence, someone whose recognition, or lack thereof, sends ripples across the industry. And the impact? Instant, visceral, and undeniably human. But here's where the story gets even more complicated. Because what happened on the red carpet was just the beginning. There were whispers backstage. Observers with insider knowledge reported subtle exchanges, fleeting looks, and tensions that no camera could capture. Something more than a casual remark was happening. The power dynamics of celebrity, the politics of recognition, and the unspoken hierarchies of Hollywood began to unfold. And it wasn't just Meghan reacting emotionally. The event set off a chain reaction, touching social media, press outlets, and even the very circles of influence where both Meghan and Ariana operate. And you have to wonder, how does someone respond when the world watches your embarrassment? Do you fight back? Smile through it? Ignore it? Meghan's reaction, both public and private, would become a case study in celebrity resilience, image management, and emotional control under pressure. She had to navigate not only her own feelings, but also the potential fallout. How this moment might be twisted by headlines, memes, and online commentary. Every choice carried weight. Every gesture was analyzed. And in the age of instant virality, a single misstep could become a defining moment. Now, let's pause for a moment and ask a question. Have you ever been in a situation where someone dismisses you in front of others, where your accomplishments, your presence, your very identity seems invisible? It's not just embarrassing, it cuts deep. It forces introspection, doubt, and sometimes anger. And for Meghan Markle, the stakes were amplified by fame, history, and public scrutiny. This wasn't just about recognition. It was about being validated in a world where perception often outweighs reality. And yet, even in that vulnerable moment, Meghan had an audience. Millions would watch, millions would comment, and millions would form opinions, all within seconds. The red carpet became a stage, not just for performance, but for confrontation, whether intended or not. The dichotomy of public scrutiny and private pain is something few people outside celebrity life can truly understand, and this incident laid it bare. Every photograph, every tweet, every replay contributed to a narrative that Meghan had no control over. But here's the real kicker. What the world saw was only a fraction of what happened. Behind the scenes, conversations, whispers, and subtle gestures painted a far more complex picture. There were aides, stylists, PR teams, and other celebrities who witnessed the dynamics unfold. And some of them, intrigued or perhaps concerned, began leaking details, small hints that would later explode online. The red carpet, which had started as a glamorous showcase of artistry, had become a pressure cooker of perception, emotion, and tension. And no one walking away that night would remain untouched by what had just occurred. And that, dear audience, is why this story matters right now. Because it's not just a celebrity anecdote. It's a study in human emotion under pressure, in the collision of fame, influence, and personal vulnerability. It's a lesson in how fleeting moments can spiral into cultural phenomena. And it's a story that begs a question. When someone of Ariana Grande's magnitude casually dismisses another star, what does it say about influence, status, and the fragility of identity in the public eye? But perhaps the most shocking part of this story is yet to come. Because what happened on the red carpet, what the cameras captured, was only the beginning. What Meghan experienced backstage, in whispered conversations, in unseen gestures, would reveal a layer of tension, rivalry, and human drama that no one expected. The public only saw a glance, a polite smile, and an offhand comment. The real story, the explosive, dramatic, emotionally charged story was just beginning to unfold. And what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. The night was electric. Manhattan glowed in its signature neon haze, yellow cabs honking as if punctuating the excitement in the air. Broadway had never felt so alive, so charged with energy. The marquee lights of the Gershwin Theater spelled out, "Wicked, for good" in bold, shining letters, casting a golden glow on the sidewalk below. Fans lined the street, phones held high, desperate for a glimpse of their idols. Paparazzi had already claimed their positions, cameras clicking incessantly like a swarm of metallic insects. And in the midst of this chaotic ballet of fame and anticipation, Meghan Markle arrived. She stepped out of her sleek, black limousine with the composure of someone who has walked red carpets across continents. Yet there was a subtle tension in her movements. Every eye was on her: the cameras, the crowd, the surrounding celebrities. She adjusted the strap of her dress, smoothed the hem, and forced a confident smile. But in her mind, the moment was layered with complexities. She was not just walking into a Broadway premiere. She was walking into a battlefield of perception, an arena where every gesture could be amplified, every interaction dissected. The scene was cinematic. Glittering gowns floated past in waves. Tailored tuxedos stood like statues on the carpet, and the air was thick with perfume, anticipation, and unspoken hierarchies. The photographers didn't just want images. They wanted a story, a moment, a spark that could ignite millions of likes, shares, and tweets. And the celebrities, like chess pieces in this grand spectacle, maneuvered carefully, aware that one wrong step or one wrong glance could make or break their narrative for the night. Meghan's eyes scanned the crowd, taking in the familiar faces and the unfamiliar ones. Broadway regulars mingled with Hollywood royalty, and the two worlds collided in dazzling chaos. But among all this grandeur, one presence was impossible to ignore: Ariana Grande. Her arrival was heralded by a collective gasp from the audience, flashes multiplying as if the cameras themselves were mesmerized. Ariana's reputation preceded her. She was not just a singer or actress, she was a cultural force. Every smile, every wave, every step she took was news. And tonight, she was here, in the same space as Meghan, the intersection of two spheres of influence that rarely converged. The red carpet stretched endlessly, a runway of ambition, glamour, and tension. Meghan posed for photographers, her expressions perfectly curated: the polite smile, the subtle hand gestures, the nods of acknowledgement. Fans screamed her name, but even as she basked in the adoration, there was a flicker of anxiety beneath the surface. How would this night unfold? Would she be recognized, respected, even welcomed by her peers? Or would the walls of fame prove just as isolating as any palace hallway she had ever walked? Ariana, meanwhile, glided down the carpet with a magnetic aura that seemed almost palpable. Her entourage flanked her like guardians of a queen, guiding her steps, managing her appearances. The crowd's energy shifted subtly, gravitating toward her. Every camera lens seemed to pivot, every conversation paused, every whisper focused on her presence. And it was in this charged environment, in this delicate balance of celebrity power and public attention, that the collision was about to happen. You could almost feel the tension in the air, a kind of prelude to drama. Meghan approached, intent on a polite introduction, a professional acknowledgement, perhaps even a friendly smile. But as she extended her hand, as she prepared to engage in the intricate dance of celebrity networking, Ariana's response was unexpected. The words, casual yet cutting, floated through the air: "I don't know who that is." And just like that, the world seemed to tilt. The cameras caught Meghan's immediate reaction, a polite nod, a controlled smile, but missed the micro-expressions of disbelief, the subtle tightening of her jaw, the internal jolt of rejection. What had been a poised, glamorous entrance had shifted into a moment of silent humiliation, one that would ripple far beyond the red carpet. The audience, both present and online, didn't see the layers of complexity in that exchange. They saw only a viral clip, a caption, a headline. But backstage, whispers began to circulate. Observers noted the tension, the awkward pauses, the subtle glances exchanged between entourages. For Meghan, this wasn't just an embarrassing moment. It was a stark reminder of the fragile hierarchies in celebrity culture. Recognition isn't given. It's earned, negotiated, and sometimes arbitrarily bestowed. And for someone who had navigated royalty, Hollywood, and global fame, this kind of dismissal cut in an entirely new way. But let's pause for a second. Imagine stepping onto a stage, surrounded by the brightest lights, knowing millions are watching, only to have a peer. A peer whose opinion carries weight across social media, radio, and streaming platforms, essentially erase your presence. How would you feel? Shocked? Angry? Humiliated? Meghan, for all her experience, had to process a spectrum of emotions in a matter of seconds. She had to maintain her composure, smile for the cameras, and navigate the rest of the red carpet without allowing the moment to consume her. And yet, while the world watched the surface-level drama unfold, the backstage story was even more intricate. There were aides whispering advice, stylists adjusting gowns, PR managers coaching phrases, all while the emotional undertow threatened to overwhelm. Meghan was caught in a delicate balance. She needed to present herself as unaffected, graceful, and unshakable, all while internally questioning her place in this constellation of power, fame, and influence. The premiere itself was more than just a theatrical event. It was a stage for social power, a display of influence, and an arena where the invisible rules of celebrity conduct governed every step. Alliances, past grievances, subtle rivalries, they all played a part. And as Meghan navigated this labyrinth, she was acutely aware that one misstep could be immortalized in headlines, memes, and viral videos. The stakes were high, and the emotional cost was even higher. Meanwhile, Ariana's presence cast a long shadow. Her fans, known for their intense loyalty and social media savvy, were already amplifying her every move. Every gesture Meghan made, every smile, every glance was being measured against the backdrop of Ariana's cultural dominance. The pressure wasn't just internal. It was external, magnified by millions of observers ready to interpret, judge, and share their opinions. And yet, despite all the tension, the red carpet continued. Cameras clicked, interviews flowed, and Meghan maintained her composure, moving from one cluster of photographers to another, always aware of the lingering presence of Ariana, always conscious of how one brief exchange could define the narrative. She posed, she smiled, she nodded, all while navigating the invisible minefield of celebrity dynamics. But here's the twist. The cameras only captured a fraction of the story. The real drama, the moments that would later be dissected, discussed, and debated, were happening in subtle ways that no lens could fully capture. A whispered conversation here, a tense glance there, a stylist's hand on an arm slightly too tightly. All these micro-details contributed to an atmosphere of tension and anticipation. And the people who noticed them? Insiders, reporters, and a few celebrities who understood the stakes. And as the night progressed, the stakes only grew higher. The premieres weren't just about the performance on stage. They were about presence, power, and perception. Meghan's poise, her every gesture, and her reactions were being measured not only by the public, but by the very people she sought to connect with. And with Ariana dominating attention, the unspoken hierarchy of the evening was clear. Even a global figure like Meghan Markle could feel the sting of invisibility. And that's when the whispers backstage began to hint at something deeper. A tension, subtle but palpable, was growing between entourages. Conversations that seemed casual on the surface carried undercurrents of rivalry, subtle judgments, and unspoken power plays. And as Meghan navigated this complex web, she was forced to make choices about how to respond, how to maintain her dignity, and how to survive the scrutiny of an audience that was both omnipresent and unforgiving. But what came next? The moment that would truly change the dynamics of the night, a moment that no one expected, was about to unfold. And the cameras, the flashes, and the crowds would capture only part of it. The full story, the explosive truth, would come later, whispered through social media, amplified by insiders, and dissected by the world. And just like that, the wicked, for good premiere, a night that should have been a celebration of art and joy, had become a crucible. A crucible where Meghan Markle's poise, grace, and celebrity resilience would be tested in ways no one saw coming. The curtain had risen, and the drama was just beginning. It was supposed to be a simple, polite introduction. A moment of cordial acknowledgement on the red carpet. Just two high-profile figures exchanging pleasantries, shaking hands, maybe exchanging a few polite words. For most people, this would have been trivial, almost invisible. But when Meghan Markle walked toward Ariana Grande, the atmosphere shifted in ways that no one expected. The cameras captured Meghan's graceful approach, but what they didn't capture was the tension that tightened every muscle, every nerve in her body. She had prepared for this moment. She had rehearsed her smiles, her nods, her conversational openers. But preparation only goes so far when someone holds all the power in their social orbit. You could almost feel the invisible lines stretching between them. Ariana's presence was magnetic, commanding, undeniable. She had arrived with the air of someone who knew exactly the weight her words carried, who understood that a single dismissal could ripple across social media, news outlets, and celebrity circles alike. And Meghan, despite her own fame and influence, was now entering this charged space where perception and power could collide in seconds. As Meghan extended her hand, the briefest of smiles playing across her lips, Ariana's eyes met hers. There was a pause, just a fraction of a second, but in the language of celebrity, that pause was monumental. Time seemed to stretch. In that moment, the entire red carpet could have been frozen in still photography, capturing the tension, the expectation, and the subtle anticipation of a clash that no one wanted but everyone sensed was coming. And then it happened. Ariana's words cut through the buzz of cameras and the hum of the crowd. "I don't know who that is." A simple phrase, 3 words that landed like a thunderclap. Casual, offhand, yet devastating in its implications. To the casual observer, it might have seemed trivial, an innocent admission of unfamiliarity. But the context, the stakes, and the timing made it far more impactful. Imagine being seen by millions, standing in a room where validation matters, and hearing such a public dismissal from someone whose influence could determine how you are perceived in an instant. How would you respond? Would you freeze? Smile through it? Retreat gracefully? Meghan's reaction was immediate, controlled, but internal turmoil raged beneath the surface. She nodded politely, maintaining her composure for the cameras, her smile intact. But inside, 1,000 questions collided. Why would she say that? Did she really not know me? Or was this intentional? Is this how the world sees me? How do I respond without creating a scandal, without appearing defensive or petty? Each thought was a spike of anxiety, each microsecond stretching into eternity. And while the cameras captured Meghan's poised response, they missed the nuance. The subtle stiffening of her posture, the brief flicker of confusion in her eyes, the way she had to force a smile while internally processing an unexpected blow. It was the kind of moment that doesn't translate to headlines easily because it exists in the tiny spaces between words, in body language, in the emotions that lie beneath the public persona. The surrounding crowd noticed something was off, even if they didn't understand exactly what had happened. Photographers clicked incessantly, capturing frames that would later be analyzed, cropped, and posted across Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. Fans whispered among themselves, trying to piece together the dynamic they had just witnessed. A few murmured speculations. Was it tension? Was it a misunderstanding? Or was it a subtle power play, the kind that Hollywood thrives on? It's worth pausing here to consider the psychology at play. Ariana Grande, knowingly or unknowingly, had exercised social power in an instant. Recognition, or the lack thereof, can define status within celebrity culture. To be dismissed, even casually, by a peer of comparable fame, is a subtle yet powerful statement. It's a reminder that in this world, reputation and influence are constantly negotiated, and sometimes a single interaction can tip the balance. Meanwhile, Meghan had to navigate not only her own emotional response, but also the optics of the interaction. Every gesture, every smile, every word was under scrutiny. Was she annoyed? Hurt? Did she feel invisible? The public couldn't see, but the tension was palpable. Her team, watching from the sidelines, likely counseled her to maintain composure, to appear unbothered, to preserve her image. Yet even with strategic guidance, The emotional impact of being casually dismissed is not something that can be easily mitigated. Now, let's talk about timing. This wasn't a private conversation. This was a public red carpet event. Every word, every expression was potentially viral. The cameras had an unflinching eye, and social media would amplify every nuance within minutes. A clip of 3 seconds could generate thousands of reactions, trending hashtags, and endless commentary. In such a high-stakes environment, a small misstep or awkward interaction can spiral into a defining moment that overshadows the entire event. And then there's the emotional layer. Meghan has spent years navigating public scrutiny, royal life, and celebrity. She has experienced praise and criticism in equal measure. But there is something uniquely jarring about being publicly dismissed by a contemporary, someone whose presence in pop culture is ubiquitous, someone whose influence is immediate and measurable. It's not just embarrassment. It's a challenge to identity, status, and relevance. How do you reconcile that? How do you maintain your confidence in the face of such a subtle, yet public slight? In that instant, Meghan had to decide, do I respond, or do I walk away? And even if she chose to respond, how? A smile? A witty remark? A subtle acknowledgement? Each option carried risk. Each choice would be scrutinized, dissected, and potentially misinterpreted. The red carpet is a stage, yes, but it is also a crucible of social dynamics, where every interaction has layers of meaning beyond the immediate. The awkwardness extended beyond the immediate encounter. The surrounding photographers, the fans lining the street, the reporters with microphones, it was all part of the amplified effect. The moment became a ripple in a pond, spreading through social media within minutes. Clips of the interaction circulated online, accompanied by commentary, speculation, and memes. Some viewers sympathized with Meghan, highlighting the casual cruelty of the dismissal. Others critiqued her reaction, questioning why she seemed composed despite the blow. And still others debated Ariana's intent. Was it genuinely oblivious, or was it an intentional display of influence? Backstage, the tension didn't dissipate. Those who had observed the interaction noted the subtle shifts in body language, the way Meghan's entourage clustered protectively, the fleeting glances exchanged among staff. Insiders whispered about the power dynamics at play, speculating on unspoken rivalries, historical tensions, and the delicate hierarchy of celebrity interactions. What seemed like a 3-second encounter on camera had layers of meaning for those present, a microcosm of the broader world of fame, influence, and social navigation. And then there's the aftermath. Meghan would have to process the moment privately, reflect on the emotional sting, and consider the implications for her public image. How do you recover from an interaction like this without letting it define you? How do you maintain dignity while the world watches, speculates, and judges? These questions are not theoretical. They are intensely personal, and for someone in Meghan's position, they are unavoidable. Let's ask the audience. Have you ever experienced a moment where someone dismissed your presence, your identity, or your achievements in front of others? Felt the sting of invisibility? Now, imagine that on a global scale, with cameras capturing every reaction and social media ready to amplify it 1,000-fold. That is the crucible Meghan faced in this single interaction. And yet, the story doesn't end here. Because while the cameras captured the polite smile and the graceful nod, they missed the next layer, the backstage fallout, the whispers, the subtle gestures of tension, and the private moments of frustration and reflection. What Meghan did next, how she managed the situation, and the choices she made in those seconds and minutes would shape the narrative far more than the initial dismissal. And that is where the true drama begins. The unseen reactions, the whispers among entourages, the strategic calculations, and the emotional processing that no camera could capture. What came next would set the stage for a chain of events, rumors, and revelations that would dominate headlines, spark social media debates, and leave viewers questioning what really happened behind the glitz and glamour. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. It's easy to look at the red carpet and think you understand it. Glittering gowns, perfectly tailored tuxedos, flashing cameras, and smiling faces. It seems like a celebration of glamour, a theater of perfection. But the reality is far more complex. Behind the velvet ropes, the stage smiles, and the perfectly posed photographs lies a world of tension, insecurity, and unspoken rules. The red carpet is both a performance and a minefield, a place where perception outweighs reality, and one misstep can dominate headlines for days. And for Meghan Markle that night, the red carpet was a stage where the difference between appearance and reality would become painfully clear. As she stepped out of the limousine, the first thing Meghan noticed was the contrast between expectation and reality. In her mind, this premiere was supposed to be a celebration, a night where she could mingle with fellow artists, enjoy the magic of Broadway, and perhaps even make a few connections. But what she encountered was a different kind of reality. The cameras didn't just capture her, they scrutinized her. Every movement, every smile, every subtle tilt of her head was analyzed, judged, and ready to be amplified. The glamorous image she projected was only half of the story. The other half existed in the shadows of scrutiny and social dynamics she had no control over. Walking the red carpet is a choreography of power. Celebrities are not merely actors in this spectacle. They are strategists, aware that placement, posture, and presence carry meaning. Who stands next to whom is a subtle assertion of status. A smile, a glance, or a touch can be interpreted as endorsement or dismissal. Meghan understood this, and yet, even with experience navigating the public eye, she was unprepared for the subtle signals and invisible hierarchies that night. She noticed the clusters of groups forming naturally. Hollywood regulars mingled with Broadway veterans. Pop stars floated past in a stream of confidence and charisma. Journalists leaned forward with microphones, their eyes scanning for moments that could become the next viral sensation. And then there was Ariana Grande, effortlessly drawing attention, commanding it without apparent effort. The contrast between them was stark, not just in fame, but in the dynamics of presence. Meghan, despite her global recognition, suddenly felt like a guest trying to navigate someone else's party. The cameras loved the spectacle. Every frame of Meghan walking, every laugh, every poised gesture was captured and instantly disseminated across social media. But the cameras can't capture the undercurrent of emotion, the anxiety, the desire for validation, the fear of misstep. For someone like Meghan, who has spent years in the public eye, these moments are familiar, yet no amount of experience can make a public dismissal feel trivial. And that's exactly what happened when Ariana's comment floated through the air. "I don't know who that is." It was casual, but in that environment, it carried the weight of judgment. Not malicious necessarily, but powerful nonetheless. In the world of celebrity, recognition is currency. Being acknowledged, known, or remembered can open doors. Being ignored or dismissed can close them just as quickly. Meghan had faced critics, media scrutiny, and public commentary before, but being dismissed by a contemporary, someone whose social influence is vast and immediate, hit differently. It was a public microcosm of the hierarchy she had learned to navigate, a reminder that fame is not absolute, and relevance is constantly negotiated. The difference between the red carpet and reality became apparent immediately. Photographs captured the surface-level narrative, Meghan smiling, composed, nodding politely. Fans saw a graceful, unshakable presence. But backstage, the experience was entirely different. The emotional weight of that moment pressed on her. How do you respond when someone with cultural dominance casually erases your presence? How do you maintain composure while processing the sting of invisibility, the subtle shame, and the questioning of your own relevance? These are moments that the public rarely sees, moments that define the difference between perception and lived experience. And yet, Meghan's presence on the red carpet was not without strategy. Every step, every gesture, every smile was carefully curated. Her dress, chosen to reflect elegance without ostentation, was a calculated statement. Her hair and makeup, perfectly styled, were part of a performance of poise and confidence. But no outfit, no professional composure, could shield her from the psychological impact of being casually dismissed in front of cameras and an audience. The red carpet, she realized, is a stage where even the most polished appearances can mask deep insecurities. Consider the surrounding dynamics. Entourages whispered advice, PR teams offered last-minute guidance, and other celebrities subtly positioned themselves in ways that communicated alliances and hierarchies. Meghan, navigating this landscape, was acutely aware of her every move. She had to balance maintaining dignity, projecting confidence, and managing internal emotions, all while ensuring that nothing she did would fuel media speculation. It is a delicate balance, and one that few truly appreciate. The contrast between public perception and private reality became even more pronounced as the night progressed. Cameras caught Ariana laughing, engaging with fans, exuding effortless charisma. Meghan, meanwhile, had to navigate not just her own emotional response, but the optics of the interaction. How do you maintain a public image of grace and composure when inside you feel dismissed, unrecognized, and perhaps even vulnerable? This is the paradox of celebrity. Being constantly seen, yet feeling invisible in crucial moments. Audience, consider this. Have you ever experienced a moment where you put your best foot forward, only to be overlooked, dismissed, or ignored? Felt the sting of invisibility in a room full of people? Multiply that by millions of observers, cameras, and social media platforms ready to amplify every nuance, and you begin to understand the pressure Meghan faced. Every second, every glance, every micro-expression was being cataloged, interpreted, and prepared for analysis. The red carpet is an environment that thrives on appearances, yet punishes the slightest deviation from expectation. Meghan's experience that night exemplified this paradox. She was poised, polished, and dignified, yet a single offhand comment had exposed the fragility of perception. The cameras captured perfection, but the reality was far messier. Internal doubt, emotional tension, and the subtle realization that even global fame cannot insulate you from casual dismissal. Backstage, the reality grew even more complex. Conversations between entourages, whispered observations, and subtle body language painted a picture of social maneuvering invisible to the audience outside. The networks of influence, recognition, and hierarchy in Hollywood were on full display, but in ways that the casual observer could not see. Meghan's experience of the night was shaped as much by these unseen dynamics as by the interactions that were captured on film, and the stakes were higher than they seemed. Being dismissed by Ariana Grande was not merely a moment of personal discomfort. It was a potential pivot point in the narrative surrounding Meghan in Hollywood. Social media would not only notice but amplify. Journalists would dissect the interaction, and the public would speculate endlessly. Every choice Meghan made in response, smile, nod, walk away, carried consequences that extended far beyond the moment itself. So what did Meghan do? How do you maintain grace when the world is watching, when your relevance is questioned in real time, when a fleeting interaction threatens to define your public perception? The answers, like the night itself, are complex. Composure is part strategy, part instinct, part sheer willpower. And for someone who has navigated both royalty and global fame, the calculus is always more complicated than it appears. And yet, even amidst the meticulous preparation, the carefully managed appearances, and the internal fortitude, the tension lingered. The red carpet was glamorous, yes, but it was also a crucible. Every movement, every glance, every unspoken reaction mattered. The reality behind the perfection of the red carpet, the preparation, the emotions, the strategic calculations, revealed a truth that the public rarely sees. Celebrity is a performance, but the consequences of that performance are real, emotional, and deeply personal. But just when it seemed that Meghan had navigated the initial challenge, just when the cameras had captured her poised response, the next moment would arrive, one that would shake the night, intensify the tension, and reveal the true depth of the stakes. The red carpet had only set the stage. The real drama, the backstage reality that no one saw, was about to unfold. And what happened next would change the story entirely, and no one expected it. The red carpet moment was over, or so it seemed. Cameras had flashed, photographers had clicked, and Meghan Markle had moved on, maintaining her composure for the world to see. But in today's hyper-connected age, a single moment doesn't fade into memory. It detonates online, ricocheting across social media platforms, viral threads, and endless streams of commentary. Within minutes of the wicked, for Good premiere, The 3-second clip of Ariana Grande saying, "I don't know who that is," had taken on a life of its own. You could almost hear the ping of notifications as millions of users reacted in real time. Twitter exploded first. Hashtags began to trend. Memes sprouted within minutes. TikTok creators recreated the moment, exaggerating facial expressions, adding dramatic music, and dissecting body language frame by frame. Instagram stories circulated with zoom-ins on Meghan's reaction, each follower adding commentary, opinion, and judgment. The digital echo chamber amplified a fleeting interaction into a global spectacle. For Meghan, the social media storm hit like a tidal wave. The polite nod and controlled smile she had mustered on the red carpet were now being analyzed, critiqued, and dissected by millions who had never met her. Did she look hurt? Did she overreact? Did she maintain dignity, or fail to? Every micro-expression, every posture, every subtle glance was being dissected as evidence of her inner turmoil. It was a harsh reminder. In the digital age, there is no privacy, no buffer, no escape from public judgment. And the commentary wasn't subtle. Some users mocked her, implying she was overly sensitive or out of touch with pop culture. Others sympathized, highlighting the cruelty of being casually dismissed by a cultural powerhouse like Ariana Grande. But almost universally, the clip became a topic of conversation, a cultural reference point for celebrity interactions, hierarchy, and social dynamics. The brevity of the comment only added to its potency. It was sharp, casual, and easily memed, the perfect recipe for virality. It's fascinating to consider the mechanics of social media in moments like this. The clip of Ariana's dismissal functioned like a domino, triggering a cascade of reactions. Accounts with millions of followers amplified it first, giving it authority. Memes, GIFs, and videos repackaged the interaction for humor, shock, or commentary. Then came threads dissecting body language, tone, and implied intent. Within an hour, millions had seen the moment, and it had already become part of the public consciousness. Social media doesn't just report events. It constructs narratives, assigns meaning, and often twists them in unexpected ways. Meanwhile, Meghan's camp was undoubtedly aware of the explosion. PR teams, social media managers, and advisors monitor every mention of high-profile clients, especially during high-visibility events. They knew that even a minor interaction could balloon into a headline, and that the public's interpretation could define the narrative for days. In this environment, controlling the story is nearly impossible. Every post, every tweet, every comment is a thread in the fabric of perception, and once it's out there, it takes on a life of its own. And the audience? They were ravenous. Celebrity culture thrives on these microdrama moments. People love to see the tension between public figures, to analyze gestures, to speculate on intent. The virality of Ariana's comment was fueled not just by the content of the words, but by the context. Meghan Markle, the former royal turned global celebrity, publicly dismissed by one of the most influential pop stars in the world. It's a perfect storm of status, ego, and social dynamics that captivates audiences and drives engagement. Let's pause here. Imagine scrolling through your feed and seeing millions of people discussing a moment that you thought was private, fleeting, insignificant. How would you feel? Would you laugh it off? Feel hurt? Become defensive? Now, multiply that by a global audience with cameras, millions of followers, and a media ecosystem primed to interpret every nuance. This is the reality Meghan faced in the aftermath of the red carpet. And then came the memes. Social media thrives on humor, and there is almost no tragedy too great to avoid being turned into a joke. Creators overlaid text on still frames, exaggerated reactions, and even juxtaposed Ariana and Meghan against pop culture references, turning the moment into a source of entertainment, speculation, and ridicule. What had been a brief, private interaction was now a cultural artifact, immortalized in hundreds of digital formats, and endlessly circulated across platforms. But there was more than humor. Debate flared. Was Ariana's dismissal intentional or oblivious? Was Meghan overreacting, or was the sting justified? Fans of both celebrities weighed in, forming armies of defenders and critics. The comment became a lightning rod for conversations about fame, social dynamics, and hierarchy in the entertainment world. Suddenly, a 3-second clip was part of a broader cultural dialogue, touching on celebrity psychology, human emotion, and the pressures of public life. Meanwhile, Meghan's personal experience contrasted sharply with the viral narrative. While the world dissected her reaction, she processed the moment internally, a cocktail of embarrassment, frustration, and vulnerability. There's a profound difference between the controlled performance for cameras and the private emotional response that follows a perceived slight. Social media amplifies only one side of that coin, the visible exterior, leaving the depth of internal experience largely invisible. It's worth noting the timing as well. This wasn't merely a trending topic, it was an immediate, rapid-fire explosion. In the digital age, virality happens almost instantaneously. Within minutes, the clip was circulating across multiple platforms, shared by fans, journalists, meme accounts, and celebrity observers. Every second brought new commentary, new interpretations, and new pressure. The pace of social media allows no breathing room, no time to recover emotionally, no way to escape the spotlight. And yet, Meghan remained composed. Publicly, she maintained her poise, continuing to pose for photographers, smile for fans, and navigate interviews. Privately, the emotional impact was undeniable. There's a dual reality at play: the visible, curated narrative that the public consumes, and the hidden, internal experience of those involved. For Meghan, the contrast was stark. The red carpet image projected strength, elegance, and grace, while the social media aftermath magnified every tiny moment of tension, making her vulnerability visible to millions. Audience, ask yourself, how would you handle being scrutinized on this scale? Imagine every micro-expression, every glance, every smile dissected by a global audience in real time. Now imagine millions debating your relevance based on a 3-second interaction. This is the crucible of modern celebrity, where social media transforms fleeting moments into lasting judgments. But here's where the situation escalates. Social media doesn't exist in a vacuum. It feeds into mainstream media, which amplifies the narrative even further. Within hours, news outlets were covering the story, often framing it in sensationalist terms. Meghan Markle snubbed by Ariana Grande, or pop star dismisses former royal on red carpet. Headlines shaped public perception, memes circulated endlessly, and social media debates fueled coverage across news cycles. The virality of the moment had created a feedback loop. Social media sparks media coverage, which drives further social media engagement, reinforcing the narrative in ways that are difficult to control. And the emotional stakes for Meghan? Immense. Beyond the initial sting of Ariana's comment, she had to navigate the unfolding digital landscape, anticipate public interpretation, and consider the implications for her personal brand, relationships, and public perception. It's a complex, high-pressure environment where every decision carries weight, and where a single interaction can ripple outward in unpredictable ways. But the story doesn't end here. Because while social media amplified the visible aspects of the encounter, the hidden dynamics backstage, the whispered conversations, the subtle gestures, the unspoken alliances, were just as impactful. These elements would shape Meghan's response, inform her decisions, and eventually reveal a side of the story that social media alone could never capture. And that's the cliffhanger. What Meghan did in response to the social media explosion, the choices she made privately, and the strategy she employed would set the stage for even more shocking revelations. The world saw one story, but the full truth was far more complicated, emotional, and dramatic. And what came next would shift the narrative entirely, and no one expected it. Why does it even matter what Ariana Grande said, you might ask? On the surface, it's just a comment. On the red carpet, millions of words and gestures fly by every second, and a simple, "I don't know who that is" could easily be overlooked. But in the world of celebrity, context is everything. And the context here is explosive. Ariana Grande isn't just another celebrity. She's a cultural phenomenon, a force whose recognition, or lack of it, carries a weight measured not only in fame but in influence, social capital, and perception. Imagine being at a party where everyone is watching, where connections are currency, and one person, whose name alone commands attention, casually dismisses you. That is the power of the Ariana factor. Her casual words, seemingly innocent, have the potential to reshape narratives, influence conversations, and alter the social landscape around you. For Meghan Markle, this wasn't just a snub, it was a seismic moment in the delicate ecosystem of celebrity recognition. Ariana's influence is multidimensional. She dominates charts, social media platforms, and headlines simultaneously. A single tweet, a single Instagram post, can sway public opinion and create viral sensations overnight. Her every appearance is analyzed, dissected, and consumed by millions who follow her work, her persona, and even her fleeting interactions. When she speaks or ignores, you don't just hear it, you feel it. It resonates. It shapes perceptions. And on that night, when she casually said she didn't know Meghan, the ripple effect was instantaneous. But the Ariana factor isn't only about fame. It's about perception and cultural authority. In celebrity culture, recognition is power. To be acknowledged by someone like Ariana is to gain validation in a hierarchy where public perception often outweighs actual talent or accomplishment. Conversely, being dismissed, even casually, can trigger an emotional and social cascade that affects not only reputation but personal confidence. And for Meghan, who has spent years navigating public scrutiny and global attention, this was a moment that tested her resilience on multiple levels. It's also important to consider the psychological component. Ariana's influence isn't just symbolic, it's structural. Her words and reactions subtly communicate the boundaries of inclusion, recognition, and status. By saying she didn't know Meghan, Ariana inadvertently, or perhaps unconsciously, placed Meghan outside the inner circle of social relevance at that event. It's the kind of subtle power move that can be devastating in high-stakes social environments. Meghan, despite her accomplishments and global profile, had to reconcile the fact that she had been publicly unrecognized by someone whose influence can't be ignored. Audience, ask yourself, have you ever felt dismissed by someone whose opinion truly mattered? Someone whose acknowledgement would have validated your presence, your efforts, your identity? Now imagine that feeling magnified millions of times over, in a room full of cameras, flashing lights, and an audience ready to judge every reaction. This is the emotional terrain Meghan faced in that moment, navigating the complexities of status, visibility, and recognition. But there's more. The Ariana factor also extends into the social web of celebrity dynamics. Stars do not exist in isolation. They operate in networks of influence, alliances, rivalries, and subtle hierarchies. Ariana's reaction did not occur in a vacuum. Other celebrities, staff members, and insiders took note, interpreting gestures, analyzing body language, and speculating about unspoken tensions. A casual dismissal becomes a symbol, a message encoded in social signaling that everyone present interprets. Meghan's position in this network suddenly shifted, not due to any fault of her own, but due to the gravity of Ariana's cultural authority. This also sets the stage for the complicated interplay between ego and public image. Celebrities are acutely aware of how fleeting moments can shape narratives. A single dismissive comment, amplified by social media, can redefine how audiences perceive you, sometimes overshadowing your accomplishments entirely. Meghan had to process not only the immediate sting of the comment, but also the potential long-term implications for her public image. Every gesture, every word she chose to say afterward would be magnified, dissected, and potentially misinterpreted. And let's not forget the emotional layers. Public dismissal triggers a mix of feelings: shock, confusion, embarrassment, and even a subtle form of self-doubt. Meghan's poised exterior masked a storm of internal processing. She was likely asking herself countless questions. Why would Ariana say that? Does this mean I'm not relevant? How will this be interpreted by the world? Each of these questions added emotional weight, compounding the stress of navigating the red carpet while managing a viral moment. Now, consider the broader implications. The Ariana factor extends beyond the moment. It shapes the social narrative for the evening and beyond. Memes, clips, and commentary frame the story, influencing how fans, journalists, and industry insiders perceive the incident. A single offhand remark is no longer ephemeral. It becomes part of a living, breathing narrative that shapes public opinion and, by extension, celebrity hierarchies. Meghan's 3-second encounter with Ariana had effectively been converted into a high-stakes narrative battleground. And then there's the element of contrast. Meghan, despite her fame and achievements, is navigating a different trajectory from Ariana. The former royal-turned-Hollywood personality brings a mix of global attention, historical intrigue, and cultural symbolism. Ariana, on the other hand, represents contemporary celebrity dominance, cultural resonance, and social media authority. When these two worlds collide, the disparity in recognition and influence becomes starkly visible. It's not just about who is more famous, it's about who holds social and cultural authority in that space at that moment. But the story deepens. Because while Ariana's words were public, there were subtler dynamics at play backstage. Whispers, gestures, and unspoken interactions amplified the effect of her comment. Other celebrities, staff members, and insiders took note, creating a network of observations that fed into social media, tabloids, and the gossip ecosystem. What the public saw was only a fraction of the story. The backstage environment was layered, complex, and rife with unspoken power dynamics that Meghan had to navigate. Audience, think about it. Have you ever been dismissed not just once, but in a space where your visibility is under scrutiny, where every reaction is documented, and where influence dictates social currency? How do you respond when the world watches, when your reputation, validation, and social standing are all on the line in real time? Meghan's experience illustrates the intersection of personal emotion and public spectacle, a moment where the Ariana factor exerted both direct and indirect pressure. And yet, despite the dismissal, Meghan's poise remained intact. She continued along the red carpet, engaged with fans, and maintained her composed public image. But internally, she was processing the implications of the encounter, the subtle shift in social hierarchy, the viral potential of the clip, and the emotional impact of being publicly unrecognized. This is the duality of celebrity life, the visible narrative of composure versus the invisible narrative of personal response. And here's the twist. The Ariana factor didn't end with the comment. Its reverberations would continue to unfold, influencing media coverage, social media discourse, and Meghan's own responses in the hours and days that followed. The moment had become a catalyst, sparking speculation, analysis, and commentary that extended far beyond the walls of the theater. The public saw one story, but the unseen dynamics backstage and the emotional undercurrents created a far more intricate narrative. And that's the cliffhanger. While the world was digesting Ariana's words, while social media erupted and headlines proliferated, what Meghan did next, her private responses, strategic decisions, and emotional processing, would set the stage for revelations and drama that no one could anticipate. The Ariana factor had created ripples, and the waves were only beginning to hit. And what happened next would shift everything, and no one saw it coming. The cameras saw Meghan Markle standing tall, smiling gracefully, posing effortlessly for the photographers. The red carpet glimmered around her, a cascade of lights and flashes capturing what the world perceived as poise, elegance, and confidence. But behind the lens, behind the meticulously staged image, Meghan's mind was a storm of emotions, a whirlwind of doubt, frustration, and quiet despair that no camera could capture. This is the part of celebrity life that rarely reaches headlines. The private, internal world where human vulnerability collides with public expectation. Ask yourself, have you ever smiled while feeling completely defeated inside? Have you ever projected confidence while your thoughts were racing, questioning, spinning, and even panicking? That is exactly what Meghan was experiencing. Despite her outward composure, the dismissal by Ariana Grande, the casual, cutting words, echoed in her mind. I don't know who that is. Simple. 3 words. But to someone like Meghan, whose identity, image, and reputation have been under constant public scrutiny, those words weren't trivial. They were a mirror, reflecting insecurities she had spent years trying to manage. Meghan's inner world is complex. She has navigated life under intense global attention, moving from Hollywood actress to global royal, and then to a figure constantly dissected in the media. Every decision she makes, every gesture, every expression is analyzed for hidden meaning. And now, In a room filled with Hollywood elites, a public dismissal by one of the most influential stars in the world triggered a cascade of self-reflection and emotional turbulence. The experience was not only embarrassing, it was profoundly human. Inside, Meghan's mind was replaying every moment. Her approach on the red carpet, the brief pause before Ariana's words, the polite nod she forced herself to give, the constrained smile that masked her shock. Every action, she reflected, had been measured, but it wasn't enough. In her inner world, the voice of doubt crept in. Did I misread the situation? Should I have said something? Was I too eager, too polished, too conscious of appearances? These thoughts collided with memories of past moments, both in Hollywood and in the royal spotlight, where perception could turn the tide of public opinion with frightening speed. And then there was the emotional layering. The mix of sadness, disappointment, and even a subtle form of anger. Anger, not at Ariana personally, but at the cruel mechanics of fame. At the public scrutiny that makes every slight monumental. At a system where relevance is measured by acknowledgement from those who hold social and cultural power. In that moment, Meghan wasn't just dealing with a fleeting embarrassment. She was confronting the raw, unfiltered reality of living a life in which public validation is intertwined with personal identity. It's easy for audiences to see celebrities as larger-than-life figures, impervious to petty slights or personal rejection. But Meghan's internal experience revealed the opposite. Fame magnifies every interaction, turning what might be a minor moment in a private context into a high-stakes emotional event. Her thoughts were racing. She imagined how the media would frame the exchange. She imagined the memes that would emerge. She imagined the social media commentary that would dissect her expression, her body language, her tone. Every hypothetical scenario added layers to her anxiety, compounding the sting of the dismissal. Audience, consider this. How would you handle being judged, analyzed, and dissected by millions for a moment that felt private, fleeting, and yet inescapable? How do you reconcile the human need for recognition with the relentless scrutiny of public life? Meghan was experiencing this dichotomy acutely, caught between the polished, public persona and the deeply human, private response. But the inner world of Meghan didn't stop at processing the moment. It extended to strategic thinking. Every thought was filtered through the lens of consequence. How should I respond to protect my image? Should I engage, ignore, or redirect attention? Each choice carried potential risks and rewards, not only for public perception but also for her personal sense of dignity.